Chelsea really want to sign Moises Caicedo, but is he the right player for them, and is he worth 80, 90 or 100 million pounds? So first, let's talk about Caicedo. Who is he? What is he actually good at? Caicedo started playing under Graham Potter for Brighton last year, but he's really flourished under Roberto Zerbi, and that's been at the base of midfield in a 4-2-3-1. Of course, he's also filled in at right back very briefly, but this is where he really flourishes. So your idea of Caicedo is probably that he's very good defensively, and you'd be right. He's excellent at covering these areas on the left-hand side of his midfield, but it's also worth saying that he's an excellent presser. So when Brighton go forward, he's very good at closing down spaces very quickly. When he tackles, and when he slide tackles in particular, he tends to put his whole body into the ball, and he generally wins it pretty cleanly. We have some good evidence of this courtesy of Tom Harris from The Athletic, this wonderful chart here which shows Caicedo ranking really high in a lot of measures, and the special thing about this is that he's pretty high in every single measure. That's very, very rare. Most players tend to rank pretty high, maybe in tackles, but they rank really low in interceptions. This is defenders and central midfielders. But the fact Caicedo is near the top of every statistic here, that is exceptional. But it's not just the defending that matters with Caicedo. I can't stress that enough. Brighton fans will tell you firsthand that what makes Caicedo special is what he does with the ball. Most of you know the way Brighton build up. It's all of their players back, it's luring the opposition onto them to try and get them to press, and then Brighton play through them. And Caicedo is extremely important in this tactic. What makes Caicedo really special is that when an opposition player is coming to press him, when he's about to receive the ball, he's always scanning. It's like he's got a picture behind his head. He knows exactly what's going on. So when he does receive that ball and the opposition player comes in, he'll do one of two things generally. He'll either turn them and make him look pretty stupid, and he can just carry the ball forward, or what he'll also do, and it's very helpful for Brighton as they try and attack quickly, is that ball comes into him and he will first time or within a couple of touches pass it elsewhere. We can see that here in this other chart, thank you Tom, which shows that Caicedo is one of the best midfielders in the Premier League for ball retention. This is adjusted for possession, and it's really impressive. I mean, he's up there with Rodri and Fabinho, and that's considering that Caicedo's game revolves around bringing pressure onto himself and still keeping the ball. So that's all well and good, but where does he actually fit into Chelsea? Well, as last season proved, Chelsea really needs someone with Caicedo's attributes. Last season, at least from when Enzo Fernandez joined in January for a huge sum of money, he generally played alongside Ruben Loftus-Cheek or Mateo Kovacic in midfield in a 4-2-3-1. Later down the season, when Frank Lampard arrived, Enzo went from a midfield 2 to a midfield 3. The important thing here is that Enzo tended to be the deepest player, and this has been a big problem for Chelsea. Let's start with Enzo Fernandez. I mean, in front of me, we've got two Smarter Scout diagrams. This is from when he was at Benfica, and this is from when he was at Chelsea. Can you notice anything? Well, at Benfica, he was doing really well in the attacking categories, pretty well in the defensive categories, and at Chelsea, both of those have kind of dropped off. But the keen-eyed viewers amongst you will have noticed there's one thing that's gone up at Chelsea, that's his progressive passing. This is simply because Enzo Fernandez is playing deeper down the pitch. He's an excellent passer, he's still breaking the lines with them, but because he's deeper, further away from the penalty box, he's not as much as a threat in the final third. And it's not just Enzo Fernandez suffering here, it's the entire team. Let's say you have Kovacic and Enzo in midfield, neither one of those are particularly defensive, no one like, I don't know, Moises Caicedo, which means if one of them goes forward, the other one's more likely going to have to stay back, and even then the other player can't go too far forward, knowing the other isn't particularly amazing defensively, which means Enzo Fernandez is either very deep down the pitch, or even if he's pushing more towards the penalty box, he can't go very near to it, leaving Kovacic isolated. This is something Frank Lampard pointed out about Enzo Fernandez, saying he'd be better further up the pitch. Also, a side note, Chelsea basically have no midfielders anymore. All of these players here they've gotten rid of. Mason Mount is potentially leaving, and Kai Havertz is already gone, and Mateo Kovacic is off to Manchester City. This is why earlier in the window Chelsea were hunting Manuel Ugarte to fill this role here, and why they're now chasing Moises Caicedo, because his skill set fits in here perfectly. We can break this down into three reasons. The first one, obviously, being that Caicedo will help Enzo Fernandez push further forward. When Enzo Fernandez was at Benfica, he had someone called Florentino Luis. He would cover for Enzo and let him go further forward into the final third and just ate up all the defensive work. Now, should Caicedo join Chelsea, he'd be able to be the new Florentino Luis for him, and Chelsea can attack with all of their new toys, Jackson and Kunku, Mudryk, Madueke, and Enzo Fernandez doesn't have to worry about leaving his midfield partner isolated because As we've covered, Caicedo is excellent defensively. Now, the second reason here is that Caicedo will help Pochettino's team press. Now, Pochettino at Spurs, he operated with a man-to-man style press, and the aim wasn't to get the opposition to lose the ball here and them to score. It was more about forcing the opposition into limited opportunities, forcing them to play long and give away the ball. Should Caicedo join, he'll be very valuable in the Pochettino press because, say the opposition look to play the ball out, if Caicedo is there, it's very unlikely that the player receiving the ball is going to be able to turn Caicedo and get away with it and break the press, just because Caicedo is so efficient at winning the ball back. And the third reason, personally, I think this is the most important, is how Caicedo will help in build-up play. When Pochettino was last in the Premier League at Tottenham, teams like Newcastle, Brighton, Burnley, they were much more happy to sit off, get in a deep block and frustrate the opposition. But now in 2023, they're much more happy to push forward and look to hunt the ball in the press. Caicedo then can be invaluable in build-up play because let's say for a second Chelsea don't get to sign him and they have someone like Lewis Hall in with Enzo Fernandez. If you're the opposition and you want to win the ball back, you're going to target Enzo Fernandez just because he's such a good passer, he's good at receiving the ball, he's the biggest threat to break in your press, which means if you can cover him pretty well, Chelsea's attack is likely to be slower and less effective and you're more likely to win the ball back. However, if you bring Moises Caicedo into this team, well, then you have two midfielders who are great at receiving the ball and really good at passing, which means the opposition, they essentially have two choices. You can try and shut down both Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez if you stop them receiving the ball, but then that makes your press quite narrow. It means Chelsea have more space to build up out wide, and you're banking on them being less effective there. With players like Reece James and Ben Chilwell, that might not work. Or the opposition can play it safe. They can drop off their lines, they can drop off their press, and if you're Chelsea, that's good, because Enzo Fernandez or Moises Caicedo are more likely to receive the ball with space and time, and you're more likely to have a successful attack and not lose the ball in your own box. So why is he so special? Why should Chelsea pay £100 million? Well, not only is he hard to replace with Brighton, but he's uniquely superb both in and out of possession, meaning Chelsea can finally unleash Enzo Fernandez and maybe make a return to Champions League football.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.